it's time to give over the floor to Robert Cole, who has been heads down, on this ID initiative for hotels. So, Robert, all over to you.
Great. Thanks
Sit back
very
and
much,
learn.
Nick. Thanks very much, Nick. Great to see you. You left out John Burns, Flo Luke.
Oh,
There's a
I'm
bunch.
sorry.
No, no, no.
Sorry,
We're
sorry.
almost out of time. But no, thanks everybody. Yes, this has been an interesting project. It originated actually in 1997 when I was on the HEDNA board, and actually myself and the woman who was the head of product management, Kathy Manning, for Expedia when it was part of Microsoft. When we were doing a descriptive content spec, we thought that it solved issues. I was running Saber's hotel program then. We thought a unique ID would solve my challenges at Saber that just really had the one code, and we couldn't reflect multi representation scenarios. And she was multi-sourcing her inventory and didn't know if it was the same hotel, different hotel. It wound up in the HEDNA spec, wound up in a HIDA spec, which a lot of people have forgotten about, but it was there for a couple of years. Was in the open travel spec. I was on the founding interoperability committee for open travel. So it's been there a long time. It's never been pulled together. So for the last year, I've been trying to pull it together. This actually started formally in 2019 as an actually HTNG work group. So we did that, built the schema, which has been revised a little bit since then, but built the schema, had about 150 use cases. We're going to introduce it with COVID, but that that didn't happen, and so now we're back. But just get into this. I have about 20 slides. I want to answer questions, so we'll kind of roll through it. So what is Hospitality ID? It's a nonprofit global registry that assigns unique ID to every hospitality property, and we'll get into how that works. But it simplifies distribution, technical interoperability. That's the goal of the platform. So really want to run through kind of how it's aligned with DIF while I'm talking to the DIF group. Problem, solution, how it works, adoption, funding, governance, timeline. So we'll roll through it. This I know is very small, but DIF does a lot of things. For those who aren't familiar with the Decentralized Identity Foundation, it's a great group that's solving some really big challenges. The main benefits of decentralized identity: the users control their data. Really widespread usability, transparency, being open source, security, ease of use. I don't think anyone on this call is opposed to any of those pillars. And it has lots of layers, the core concepts of decentralized identifiers, verifiable credentials, wallets, verifiable data and registries, identifiers and namespaces, agent frameworks. How does the messaging and routing of these things work? Verifiable credential infrastructure, of the role of issuers, holders, verifiers, applications, wallets, how the user experience ties in, the trust frameworks, and just how everything interoperates from an architectural perspective. There are people on this call who are involved in many of those layers. It's very important. I will not dive into that. I've got enough to talk about our little registry. But yeah, being a part of this SIG, these are the things that they're working on. Also, Doug Rice is heading the DIF working group, the Hospitality and Travel working group. They're working on profile information, which is really good. So you should definitely give a plug to Doug for the work going on there. So why are we here? The hospitality industry has a lot of pain points. I call these my dirty dozen, kind of in 3 categories. First one, distribution. Convoluted property mapping. We have some pretty crazy mapping tables that require oversight, and it's a little bit nuts. Flag changes kind of break everything on distribution. Booking stops, confusion arises, and it's a rough situation. Content updates now are kind of push, pull, scrape. For the final point, where's the source of truth? That's what really hospitality is about letting, on a decentralized basis, the properties and the folks using the platform to define their sources of truth. This is where the buck stops. Yes, the steakhouse is now a sushi bar, letting everybody know, sort of thing. And the next category, tech integration, data quality, not great. Lots of siloed data. Again, lots of duplication, synchronization, which starts getting rough. A lot of proprietary data formats. Time to market was working with a large tech group. 12 to 18 months to onboard because they were finding data anomalies between the central reservation system and property management system that had been in place for 5 or 7 years for groups. That's not great. I don't think I have to dive into siloed and legacy technologies. I don't really depress people with these challenges. So and manual processes, Excel, God love it, or Google Sheets is still a big process, big part of the interfacing landscape for hospitality, especially longer tail. The important one is really this one on the right. I mean, these are big problems, and the first two columns have been happening for years. The security and privacy has come to a head. The fraud risk landscape. My friends at Booking and Expedia are telling me that the number of spoofed hotels, so AI generated hotels, has gone from annoyance tier to problem tier. And nobody wants that. That's just not good. The privacy and trust burdens are all breaking down by various groups, various jurisdictions. The regulatory environment is advancing on AI, digital services, marketing, privacy. Local rules have global impact, and you have new threat vectors. I love the term fraud as a service. It's not a great thing, but it's a great term. So lots of challenges. So our thesis is, what if you had a nonprofit global registry of hospitality IDs? They need to be unique, persistent, and extensible, and they're signed to hospitality operations. So basically the real estate asset for hotels. Now, we're initially starting with lodging. We don't want to boil the ocean, but the schema supports vacation rental, short-term rental. You want to time slice things down, for a single unit by 52 owners for timeshare. Schema supports that. But also dining, meeting space, attractions, tours, and activities. That's great. We are not boiling the ocean here. We're starting with things like lodging, and all the sectors benefit. And you'll see that in the reflection of how we're structuring the board. Benefits for hoteliers, the tech stack vendors, travel sellers, and most importantly, the reason everybody's in business is for the travelers, to really improve the reliability of the information to help them have better experiences. So why is this important? 3 big pillars. One is to enhance digital trust, right? Sources of truth. If you can clearly identify authoritative sources of truth, you can combat fraud and misinformation. Maybe not completely, but it helps. Data accuracy, transparency, privacy, control of the people who are the root source of that data. It drives cost savings. I'll mention Booking Holdings is one of the founders. They're publicly announced, which is great. They're projecting 80% engineering time savings on their integrations with this platform. That 80% is a big number. That's not my number. That's their number, and so that's very encouraging. I don't have to tell anyone about the operational and service recovery costs when problems happen. Not just the guest inconvenience that occurs is certainly a huge issue. And there's certainly revenue growth in terms of simplifying distribution, expanding reach, the disruptions of these flag changes, things like that, time to market. All of that generates additional revenue. We have about 200 use cases now, but operational efficiency, I won't drill down. I'll make sure everyone can have access to the slide deck, but very strong in terms of operational efficiency. These authoritative sources of truth, even the know your business things. The EU, in I believe 2027, all the hoteliers, all the travel sellers are going to have to provide their owner and management data to every travel seller in the EU. Now, you can do that one at a time, one off. Great. You be you. But I think it's a little bit easier if you have some sort of registry to help you share that more efficiently and communicate those sources of truth. The industry challenges have been fascinating talking to groups. Personalization is the key to the eligibility for rates, ensuring that their experiences, making sure people know about various, food sensitivities, things like that, that can suddenly be tokenized and passed on. Reward relevance, connected trip, a huge, huge aspect of it that everybody's been working on for a long time. This makes it easier. And an interesting one, human trafficking, since human trafficking, hotels are a big factor in that. And in speaking with some large, multinational groups, they feel this is a huge, huge addition to help the interoperability with that, not just with law enforcement, but with technology and that sort of thing to start fighting that. So we have a myriad of use cases. People think most people are familiar with registries. Hospitality industry doesn't have one. Global trade does, the little UPC barcodes. You don't need a barcode to sell a product. You can do it without it. It just makes it a lot harder. ICANN for domain name services, and you'll see we behave a lot like ICANN. You don't need those. You can type in IP addresses just with the numbers, or hey, those V6 ones are nice and long. You don't have to have the domain names, but it just makes it easier. IATA with global air trade, you don't need airport codes and carrier codes. It just makes it easier. And global finance with Glyph, they're the Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation, set up by the G20 for anti-money laundering. It just makes cross-border payments, SWIFT payments, so much easier because you're confirmed of who you're speaking with. And we want to work very, very closely with Glyph, and Glyph is very involved with the Decentralized Identity Foundation. So what are we keeping in the registry? Not much. What we want to do is just have a very core record that basically identifies the property. We have our unique identifier, which is a UHI, and then the name, address, phone number, geolocation, key count. That's about it. That's the core data record. But the key is pointers from that. So you can then use that core record so people know that is that property. Here are the business relationship, ownership, management, brand, certifications. All those can change over time. This is a persistent code related to the property. And then the systems of record. Where's the content coming from? What are the tech stack endpoints? All of a sudden, you can start sharing those, not in a wide open basis, but on a permission basis. So you share with whom you care to share with, for what reasons, for what period of time. That's on you. We just make that easier. So how does this work? We've been throwing around a lot of concept. Concept a unique ID. It's like a UPC code that defines a product. We're putting it on a building sort of thing, or a structure. So we're uniquely identifying a product. And the format for the UHI is kind of there at the bottom. Don't have to dive into that, but if anybody cares to, I'd be happy to. Second concept is pointers, just like DNS. DNS seems to work pretty well to point to web servers and email servers. Not a lot of conflict or controversy surrounding that. So what we want to do is take that UHI, or the unique ID, and let people point to it. We are not, just like DNS, ICANN and those folks, IANA, they don't decide what you do with this. They let the world decide how they're going to use this tool. So this enables it for hospitality. This is just an example, like the MGM Grand, large hotel. This is a very, very tiny subset of these mapping tables, but everybody's got a unique code for it. Our hypothesis is, hey, minimal deployment, add a column to your mapping table, put this in, and the more people start using it, maybe you can get rid of all those other IDs. We aren't going to be sharing. I mean, Jan's on here from CoStar. We don't want to share the STR codes. That doesn't, why? Or any of the other internal codes. Let's just use this one. Let's show, share it, tokenize the data. Let's go, and everyone can get on with their lives and hopefully simplify some things. So this is an important one. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. I ran through this with the EU digital wallet consortium folks. These are kind of the 8 cohorts that people are trying to figure out how to connect. This kind of runs the hospitality ecosystem. So in the EU digital identity wallet, this is great. You're going to have actually by the end of 2026, you'll have 450 million citizens, something like that, have access to these wallets, which is a fantastic thing, huge opportunity for the hospitality industry to engage at that level with all of these with all these citizens and travelers. That wallet's used for their driver's license, their health card, and all sorts of other things that they can, payment can link to payment wallets, all that sort of things. It's set up. Each country, there are 27 countries and 27 EU markets. Each one is kind of doing their own thing, but it's all interoperable. And each country is picking their own wallets. So in this particular case, the organizations need a wallet as well, not just the consumers. You need two sides of the transaction. So here's my use case: a hotel in Nice, which is great. The owner is Marseille Venture Partners 7. Who knows who they are? It's in a basket of real estate assets in somebody's portfolio. That's all it may be. And let's just say it's a reservation is being booked through Booking.com, because Booking is a gatekeeper to the EU under the Digital Services Act. They have to support these wallets, right? It's a legislated mandate for them. And let's just say they're getting their inventory from hotel beds, right? As a bed bank. I think hotel beds has something like 50,000 hotels in those 27 markets. So this is not an edge case. So let's start down here. Where does the property get their organizational wallet? And if it's a hotel in France, that's great. They're going to get it from their local chamber of commerce. And there are a lot of them, right? It's all the local guys. They're the folks who license the hotels to be a hotel, which is very, very logical. The interesting thing is that property that's with the owner. So it'd be Marseille Venture Partners for this hotel in Nice. What happens when Marseille Venture Partners sells that property and Nick wants to buy it because he's always wanted to own a hotel own a hotel in Nice? That's fantastic. How do you get those 3,000 bookings that are coming in after the transaction from Marseille Venture Partners wallet over to Nick's wallet without going back to all these? And how does that work? That's a little bit of an unknown. There can be some processes, but that's not, you're fine. We can help in doing that. On the other side of the transaction, with the traveler, if they're booking through Booking.com, does Booking need a wallet? I don't know. They have millions of properties, and they are not the operator of the hotel. The EU Digital Services Act basically is mandating, if you think of it as Amazon, when you buy something on Amazon, it tells you who's selling the product. If something goes wrong with the product, that's their issue. So in the hospitality world, that's the owner and management company. So it's not Booking Holdings that is the owner and responsible for the hotel. They're just doing the reservation. Now, the bed bank, hotel beds, may be the merchant of record and have the inventory under a merchant model transaction. That's great. But I don't think it's practical for hotel beds to have 50,000 wallets, because they're not operating the hotels either. But they've got to be in the chain. Also, let's just say that property is a Hilton. It's not going to be Hilton either. Hilton, and I just pick, Keith is here. I'll pick on you. Sorry, Keith. So Hilton structurally, is under a franchise agreement, they are not legally responsible for that either. So you've got all these parties, and the issue is, here's how distribution works in the hotel industry. It's a little bit complicated. It's not just a one-to-one sort of link. Let's layer in payments. Those flow back and forth. If it's a merchant transaction, an agency transaction, it can go any which direction, sort of thing. Oh, we have another currency. You have brand rewards and intermediary rewards. How do those tie in? Can you double dip and get both? Can't you? I don't know, but they're there and interoperating. And heaven forbid somebody would like to market to these folks. You have that. So that's our current state here. Is you've got a lot of things going on, and these are all kind of proprietary one-to-one sorts of links. And how does this all tie together? My hypothesis is this. Now, to be explicitly clear, Hospitality ID is a registry. Think of it again as DNS. We are not, just like DNS, we are not a data store. We are not a transaction processing facility, anything like that. We're just saying, here are the groups, here are the pointers, go out and interoperate with everybody. Because when you're dealing with a hotel, the most important thing is to say, what are we dealing with? It's that property. All of a sudden you can start tying these together. And I won't go into detail on it, but you start looking at decentralized identity and DIDs, which is a decentralized ID. You can start looking at these with zero knowledge proofs, which means you don't have to have all the payload of whatever's in their wallet or all the ID. You can just know that that exists and you can get the information that you need and that they're willing to share. So all of a sudden a zero knowledge proof can say, yes, that property has that wallet. Great, that's all you need to know. There's one that exists and that wallet's recognized by the EU or that country. Fantastic. That property, again, because I'm picking on Hilton, sorry, Keith, they're a Hilton brand. Yes, they have a relationship there. Oh, they're using DerbySoft as a channel. That's great. Hotel Beds may be going through DerbySoft. They've got a relationship. Hotel Beds has a relationship with Booking Holdings. That's fantastic. Booking Holdings has an affiliate program out with an influencer. Hey, the traveler's working for the influencer. All of a sudden, zero knowledge proofs, you can connect all those dots. And so it's not just an influencer thing. We can go through the same thing and go, okay, it's not a wholesale bed bank. It's, Sundar's here from Sabre, which is great. You got the global distribution system. They're working with Amex GBT. Doesn't matter. The large, TMC. They're working with a company. Is that individual still an employee of that firm? I worked with a company 20 years ago. It's great for me, probably not great for them, but in a car rental space, I can still drop off the car for free on a one-way rental, and my wife can drive the car for no additional charge because I used to work for this other organization. That's great from a personal perspective, probably not great from the people, from the supplier perspective. So does this solve everything? Is it a silver bullet? No, it just makes everything easier. So we can look at adoption. Yes, you could have the hotel owners all point to all of these things. We don't think that's going to happen. In some cases it will, but the hotelier can define the linkage with no vendors at all. That's fine. We don't think that's the primary use case, but that's a great one. You can also have the vendors all do this and share these IDs because again, we're assigning the IDs and just saying, we know where the Marriott Marquis is in New York. It's got an ID. That's great. People can start sharing that, but we don't think it's necessarily great if the hotels are isolated from it. So all of a sudden you have an incredible network effect. If this is a for-profit organization, it would have been funded years ago, but it doesn't work as a for-profit because nobody wants it acquired by somebody, having toll gates put on it and being weaponized, whatever their fears may be. It just needs to be neutral the same way ICANN and IANA are. This is what we're kind of looking at in terms of there's a little bit of stuff going on in the travel and hospitality technology space. How can we help these interoperate better instead of being one-off solutions from all the permutations and combinations of working with these? We think that's kind of crazy. So this is a slide everybody cares about. Maybe the one with the mapping of the data. How do we stand this thing up? We're looking at it again as a nonprofit. If we want to run it like a startup in a nonprofit structure, so our equivalent of seed round would be the founder tier. You're going to have 6 founders, and we want to represent all the sectors to show everybody's neutral on this. A hotel group, a property system, global distribution system, OTA, that's kind of short for travel seller, platform, think cloud payment platform, that sort of thing, an association. It's $100,000 for each. The folks we're speaking to are multi-billion-dollar companies. They get a board seat and 10-year enterprise subscription, which is great. So they're in for the long term. That's our seed round. That gets things started. Then next we have a launch partner tier, 2.5 million, 50 groups at 50,000 per partner. Out of the people that I've been speaking with, they're easily 30 who've already said that is a no-brainer for us. $50,000 is our least expensive offshore developer who's messing with our mapping tables. We got a 5-year subscription. Let's do this. This solves pain points. Let's go. So that's our Series A. If you're a nonprofit, Series B, Series C, Series D is very bad for everyone involved. We don't want to do that. And so the way we've structured this 3.1 million in initial funding, yes, that allows us to stand up the technology. It allows us to have a staff, and we don't need a large staff to run this registry. And most importantly, it allows us to survive the valley of death, which is around 18 months out, which is kind of the low cash flow level, which is fine. So that's why we need the $3 million. So that's the funding side on the left. The revenue side on the right, yes, we're charging the hotels. We wish we didn't have to, but I've also been advised that it makes incredible sense. So yes, the amount is 10 US dollars per year. It is, as I've been telling people, that is more expensive than most Starbucks menu items. But this is not a deal killer for the property. Most importantly, that gives us a heartbeat because we want to know who is this group who's responsible hotel, because they're defining where the sources of truth are. We need that connection, and we need to kind of make sure that that's happening, and we want that heartbeat, especially when you get in the long tail, that, hey, do they exist? Is that, their phone number, their email address, their credit card, is that working? So that's why that's there. And then the rest is really on the subscription level. And we want to use a tiered kind of SaaS model. You want to look up, I mentioned the Marriott Marquis. Yeah, you can go use it with a CAPTCHA, find their ID. That's great. If you're a little startup, yeah, we'll probably have some deals for startups and things like that, which is fine. That's going to be determined not by me, that's by the board, right? But yes, you can go do this. And $100 a month sort of thing for 1 month. Hey, there's my proof of concept. Go, bring it out, go get funded. It's great. That's kind of a doable sort of thing. Or you want enterprise all you can eat. It's 25,000, and people look at it and go, you can charge a lot more than that. And it's like, well, we could. Do you want us to charge more? No, but we don't really need the money. We just need to start. Here's the governance of it. It's going to be 9 board members. We have the 6 founders plus 3 others. It'll come from the launch partner group, and it's structured fairly well. Here's our plan: is we want to get the founder commitments nailed down second quarter. Right now, we have 2 of the 6. We've got Booking Holdings, which is great, and hospitality, financial, and technology professionals from the association sector. Again, I want to make it very clear the way we're standing this up is it's not just we take their money and then we try and we go. We get all 6 founders, they're together. It's the 6 musketeers, and we move forward. We formally announce and go. So in the third quarter, fourth quarter, again, working on a proof of concept, which is going very well because, again, we've got the schema and a lot of the things worked out. But again, got to formally scope the tech. That's fine. And third quarter, launch partner pitches, get the launch partners nailed down by the fourth quarter, and basically start development by the end of the year. We then plan really an alpha by the end of the first quarter, or I'm sorry, by the end of the second quarter, and then the beta release in the third quarter, and then launch in the fourth quarter. And then we're off and running. And those timelines seem pretty reasonable for what we're building as a registry. It's not super complicated in terms of the structure. We're doing some very complicated things technologically underneath to make sure that things are secure, and certainly notification processes, passing things like that. But the actual structure of saying these are properties, here are their unique IDs, here are the ability to sub-segment those. The same thing with entities that can be, businesses associated with those properties, being able to sub-segment those. That's not earth-shakingly complex technology. So that's that. So what we're looking at in summary is we establish this nonprofit global registry, signs this unique ID, and then really the outcomes are we now have a facility to communicate digital trust, generate cost savings, grow revenues. And my question for the group is, if you can name another industry initiative that'll have a greater impact at a lower cost with a faster timeline, I would love to hear it. Nobody's been able to tell me one so far, but maybe there is one, which is great. But that doesn't negate the need for this. We think it's the most efficient. It's how do you get faster, cheaper, better are the success metrics in technology. We think this is the solution for it. So that's it. That's how you can reach me. We are looking for some sector founders and we're having advanced discussions with certainly property management systems, platforms, GDS, that sort of thing. So hotel group, we're in the process of that, but hey, we're looking for leaders to step up and say, let's make this thing happen. Just like booking, they want this to help the industry. Um, and the first thing Booking said was, "Hey, is Expedia involved? Let's make sure they're on board too." So this is a level the playing field sort of thing, not a how do we get competitive advantage over another group. So with that, open to questions. So I think we have. Hey, I timed it pretty well. I wanted to do it in about 30 minutes, and I think we're good. So any questions?
Robert, we do have three questions in the chat, at least three actually.
Okay.
We have one from Ira Vuk, who I think may
Oh,
have left,
yes.
but
Yeah.
he did give a call. Did type this up first. Says unclear yet how exactly this benefits hotels and why they'd sign up even for free. Would appreciate if this could be clarified.
Oh, sure. Um, the hotels control their pointers, right? Because yes, the hotels will have an ID, but the hoteliers want to be able to say, here is my source of truth. My content store is X, right? Here's where you can get the true real data. This is where we're updating it. So you avoid this whole push, pull, scrape. What the heck is going on? I know, Google's on here. Why does Google have bad data? I won't call out the hotel group, major hotel group, changing from one group to another. And this isn't Google's fault by any stretch of the imagination. Took them 8 weeks to get back onto Google Hotels. Same owner, same management company. That's not reasonable. That doesn't help anybody, right? Everybody loses. So the the thing with this is, yes, that's a distribution scenario, but the same applies to, say, pointing to your tech stack and the permission sharing of that. Now, the interesting thing for the hotels is, say, that owner of the management company, they can go and then point to, or they can delegate that to the management company or the brand. And in many cases, the brands may say, yes, we want to have control of that, of those pointers and of that record. That's fine. That's not our decision to make, but we just allow that to happen. But on the tech stack side, if someone's moving from, you know, uh, I don't know, I can pick on anybody, Oracle from, on-prem to cloud. That's a big change, right? And Oracle does a great job at moving that, but a lot of things wind up breaking. Yes, the primary PMS or POS understands that happening, but what about the wine inventory system that's bolted onto it? What about, whatever system or daisy chain of systems is allowing people to check out from the guest room, guest entertainment screen? A lot of that stuff breaks, and this can solve a lot of those problems. So for $10 a year, I don't know. That seems like a pretty good value. When I talked to a large association of hotel owners, I asked them how much do you think you'd charge. They thought it was going to be $250 a year. I said no. They then said, oh, 50. I said no, 10, and they laughed. So we think there's really good value to control that. And if you don't pay the $10 a year, you don't have to. We aren't twisting arms. You don't have to be part of it. It's sort of like the same way the internet works with ICANN and IANA. You don't have to have domain names doing that. You can be on the dark web, which is fine. I mean, it works. It's not great, but or maybe it's great for the people who are on the dark web. I'm not sure. But yeah, you can wind up doing it. We just think that's a tremendous benefit.
Yeah, Robert, we had just a couple of follow-ups and maybe just a quick response to the
Sure.
follow-ups because they do
Hmm.
relate to that question. So we had Scott Gillespie who said to Ira's question, what KPIs will make the case for success and cost justification?
Oh, sure. I think the the reduction in inaccurate content being distributed around the industry. So this will really help when you're defining the sources of truth of where your content is, where your ARI is, where your website are, all those sorts of things, particularly when it comes to brand changes and things like that. But any sort of tech stack change, um, all of a sudden all of the challenges of either broken connections, guest service impacts when these can't happen, all of that drives labor cost, all of that drives oh, customer recovery costs. And those are really the KPIs. What are the true performance indicators, which would be, guest satisfaction, efficiency, ability to complete transactions and guest stays, and the interoperability of all of the tech stack is are really the those key KPIs.
Very good. Okay. So, and John Burns said Ira's comment is spot on. We will need to clearly articulate the value proposition to GMs who know
Mhm.
nothing about today's connectivity difficulties. Point well
Could
made.
not could not agree
Yeah.
more, and that's a problem, right? Because
Yes.
they should. That's the lifeblood of that. And the brands do a lot of the heavy lifting on that, but at least the owners and the management companies and at the property level, they want this capability. They want to understand not just kind of this black box scenario.
Yeah.
And we feel this is a huge driver of innovation, where you can really start doing some very interesting forward-looking, type
Yeah.
things.
Eric had a question here. It says, what happens if a property chooses not to participate in pay or pay, even though it's a small amount? So if they
Oh,
choose not to participate,
that's fine.
they don't participate, I guess.
No, they don't, but their property still has an ID, and everybody else can use that ID, which is
Right.
fine. Yeah, yeah. So nobody's getting their arms. Actually, George made a interesting comment in the thing about agentic AI. Absolutely. I, when you look at everything for decentralized identity, for agentic AI, and I'm a firm believer that there's going to be those agents are going to need an identifier that says, I'm an agent and I'm working for so and so. Because just having it go, run free is probably not a good solution. Um, but from an agentic AI perspective, you need to understand the sources of truth. There's no chance that I'll give you an example that the Hilton or the Conrad in Midtown Manhattan became a Marriott luxury collection member. That's not a predictable sort of thing, on that particular date. The Tommy in Hollywood, California, became a Marriott tribute, member. You can't predict that. You need to know what's happening, when's it's happening. And again, I went through kind of quickly. One of the interesting things is you can start scheduling things in the future and saying, this is going to happen. This can, notify. And yes, a lot of the vendors, a lot of the groups do a good job on kind of a one by one, but this can help structure it a lot more efficiently and communicate those things more broadly. Again, with with the governance and the control of those properties. So.
Yeah. And we have a question from Mark Haley. It says, what processes do you expect to put in place to validate data provided by registrants to prevent fraud, reduce inaccuracies, etc.?
Oh wait, I didn't. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, it dropped for a second.
Yeah, in fact, we had a couple of questions on this subject. It
Oh,
says,
okay.
what processes do you expect to put in place
Mhm.
to validate data provided by registrants to
Ah,
prevent fraud, reduce inaccuracies, etc.? And we had a similar one
yeah, from
actually from IRA again. Says, what is the
yeah,
source of data to
right,
locate all independent properties and assign IDs to them for registry?
right, yeah. So certainly from you wind up with brands, management companies, things like that on the register side. You also wind up on the subscriber side. So Booking wouldn't necessarily work exactly like this, but Booking Holdings has about 3.4 million properties, right? Now, they don't trust all of those properties. As I mentioned before, there's some that's spoofed and things like that. But let's make up this number. Let's say there are a million of them. That's fine. They have those. But again, once you start working with with other groups, and they start coming in, Sundar's on here asking, not sure how many properties Sabre has, but it's a lot. All of a sudden you can start mapping those together and saying, yes, we have consensus across these properties. So you can start doing kind of the long chain. You can, or getting those for together to be multi-source. Yeah, you got property management systems. Interestingly, property management systems know very well when the owners and management companies change. They're at the cutting edge of that. They know, much sooner than the distribution folks in general. So we feel that network effect will certainly help on that. And then our relationships been talking to the Overture Maps folks, part of the Linux Foundation. They want to work very closely with us in terms of their points of interest, that sort of thing. Because again, we're identifying these unique properties. They have a lot of great information, but again, we can cross-reference that. You can also work with the folks like Life, right? The legal identifier folks, to make sure that these are the legal identifiers. So yes, there's a large group. If we don't trust it, it's not going in the registry is the bottom line. But once we get a point, and it's basically a scoring, a scoring system, that's how we start saying, yes, that's a reliable property, that's trusted, that gets an ID, it's published in the registry. If we just see a one-off of it, we will, well, again, I'll use Booking as the example. If they come in with their properties, yes, we'll have their IDs. We'll be able to map to their properties from an API perspective, but that doesn't mean all of a sudden Booking just goes, here are all our properties in the whole world, go dig through them or whatever. No, the ones that get shared that wind up being common between other suppliers, those are the ones that get published in the registry. So we've got processes worked out for that.
So we have a question from Michael at Swiss Safe. It says, how do you solve KYB? I don't know your business, I guess.
Yes, yes.
Regular KYB in global context. Will you handle it yourself? What?
No, no. I mean, some have suggested that we should be an issuer of these things. It's like, I mean, if the board down the road wants to become an issuer of credentials, I suppose that's within the realm of possibility. We've got enough on our plate with some of the questions that, hey, you're trying to assign these IDs to hotels. That's what we're focused on, and then the interoperability of being able to point to those. So what we would look at is in the digital. Let's use the EU one because it's easily understood. We would say that those properties can point to those jurisdictions. Yes, that is my wallet, and here's my owner and management company because it's assigned to the owner. That's great. For the large hotel groups, they're going to have to provide the KYB information to the groups like Booking or Microsoft has Bing. They're a under the Digital Services Act, they have to provide that information. Amazon has to provide, all these large groups have to, I'm sure Google is there as well, right? They all have to provide that KYB information. So all of a sudden there's a real need to have that in an organized manner where you can say, yes, here it is. And then when it changes, good, change the pointer, be able to share that with, again, who you care to share that with. So.
Yeah, we have a
Thank you.
question from G-Man. It says, have any of the GDSs shown interest in adopting these identifiers? Also, how are you standardizing data fields associated to the identifiers?
Yeah. So we aren't looking at the standardization of those data. I'm not sure if you're talking about the data fields for the standardization for the address and the geolocation.
Yes.
For the address, we're looking at basically ISO W3C standards, that sort of thing, to be compliant with those. Right. And so we've already structured that out. So that makes all the sense in the world. If you're looking at data fields for all sorts of things, for tech stack composition, descriptive content for the hotels, we aren't boiling that ocean. We think that's huge opportunities for HTNG, for open travel. There are lots of groups who are looking in that realm, and there will still need to be work done on that to make that smoother. But again, when you look at kind of the DNS scenario, we want to provide the connectivity and be able to point to that. And then with this, using, again, open API specifications, also part of the Linux Foundation, all of a sudden you can start defining, yes, here's the API I'm using, these are the methods, these are the source, here's the here's how we're interoperating with these API, and then that can start being shared as well. Again, on a permission basis with the partners.
Yeah. Since I'm here from Sabre as
yes, please. Oh, yeah.
we are. sometimes associated with the word GDS, although we are trying to change that a little bit in terms of I just typed my answer there. People may want to read it. I'm here to evaluate. It's just interesting and solves an important industry problem that as I think many people here recognize, many axes have been broken on this rock prior. Right.
I like that term.
Yes. And each company, as your mapping table, I think we had a slide that shows, have developed their own unique ways. And having helped build the glass box model at Google, and I know Google is here too. I don't know what they will publicly state about GeoIDs and KGIDs, which is their internal Google ID mechanisms for globally unique identifiers, that hotels and lodging is category 4. I can explain categories and how important these are. And you spoke a lot of use cases where brand changes, et cetera, are important, but not as important as, say, an ambulance driving to a hospital may want to know where it is.
Right.
So, or as the recent Indo-Pak war illustrates, where a particular boundary between the zone of control between two warring factions reside. So I think they're important initiatives. So we're here to learn and support and actually understand a little bit better before we take an official position. Back to you.
Right. No, absolutely. Thanks, Sundar. That's fantastic. Because again, interesting in my conversation with Overture Maps, right? And Overture Maps is, I think, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, right? Open source mapping, part of, again, Linux Foundation, which is great. Just so everybody knows, Open Travel, I believe next month is becoming part of Linux Foundation, which is terrific for them. But they're very enthusiastic, want to work with it. That's fantastic. Why are points of interest such a problem for you? And they said, yes, but they're looking at scenarios of autonomous trucking, right? It needs to get to the loading dock, right? Autonomous, robotaxi needs to drop off here. What about self-park versus valet park? All those little things. Now, we are not solving that problem and dictating where those points are or anything. We're allowing the world to share those points, and then all of a sudden you wind up in open source mapping. That's going to make everything easier. And all of a sudden, if you can start scheduling, hey, the loading dock or paving the thing, it's going to be somewhere in the future for a certain amount of time, you can start facilitating those sorts of things. We don't have the answer to that, but we feel this is, it certainly happens. Google Maps, in terms of their driving direction, knows when things are happening or alerted in advance. That's great. You can start getting that into the ecosystem. So this isn't a silver bullet, and necessarily on day one it does absolutely everything. It slices the bread and toasts it, but it provides the foundation for this stuff to happen. And the question is, if you don't have this, how are you going to accomplish these things? And that's where things start getting really, really tricky. It's what we have now.
Robert, we have 3 more questions, and we're
okay.
just
we're
over
over
time. So yeah,
okay.
so let me just quickly go through them. From Timo Schaefer, it says, ongoing question on the how to verify the people. Which role does the EU SSID play in your ecosystem? How do you integrate it with the solutions in other areas?
Okay, so yeah, for the EU, if you're depending, I'm not sure if they meant people, the travelers, we don't necessarily have anything directly to do with the travelers. We aren't going to be keeping track of them. What we're focused on is the organizational ID that can get mapped to those wallets, which then the travelers will wind up interacting with, sort of thing. So we're kind of taking it from the other end of the spectrum, going.
Good answer.
These are the organizations. Yeah.
Yeah, it's org ID. Good answer.
Yeah.
Timothy O'Neill says, does this complement or compete with the efforts of GIATA? GIATA.
Yes. Yeah. And I've spoken with GIATA about it. I think it's very, very complementary, because GIATA does some really good work there. Their fundamental thing is to say, here are everybody's codes so you can interoperate between them. But again, GIATA doesn't necessarily, in their model, and speaking, I don't like speaking for them, but they get a lot of their information from the distribution partners out there, not necessarily directly from the hotel. This will help them have better information and to be able to extend their mapping. I know one of their challenges is, how do they get this down to a room level, a unit level, an attribute level? We haven't talked about attribute-based selling. Attribute-based selling's tricky for hotels, especially, yes, it's being used for upgrades and things like that, but how do you map it out above property and in terms of the booking, the booking experience and things like that? Yeah, that starts getting tricky. Does this solve it? No, it just makes it easier. That's the whole premise. So we think it's very, very beneficial to Giada. Jan was on from CoStar. We think it helps them tremendously too by mapping out here are all the properties in the world. Because again, if they want to go into a new market, they need a large number of hotels crossing a lot of different chain scales to be able to make it work, to have good competitive set data. This makes that easier for them, sort of thing. So yeah, so we aren't trying to compete with anybody to knock anybody down. We're trying to look at how do you make this easier. Giada does some really good stuff with hotel guides that they've got a business that provides that to tour operators, all sorts of fantastic. This is going to make that a much richer product and be able to do really
Robert,
well.
I have one last question for
Sure.
you from my question. If I was if I'm coming from the identity community, and this is my first time in hospitality and travel, and I see this huge audience and think, "Oh, this guy's making sense." What about implementation? Is that if you have to stand something up, what
Mhm.
help, if anything, are you looking for from the identity community to make this real?
From the identity community, basically, I've been speaking with a lot of the different folks involved involved with that. It's really to make sure that we understand the specs, what's happening with organizational IDs. DIF and the EU folks are working very hard on organizational IDs, rolling those out, how they tie to payment. While we want to be compliant with industry standards, right? That's the number one thing to make sure that we can interoperate with how everybody's doing it. So I think from a diff perspective, from all the various groups, be it Open API, Open Wallet, Overture Maps, and Open Travel going to Linux Foundation, all of those various groups to make sure that we're highly interoperable with those. Because again, we're keeping track of five other data things. We want to make sure the addresses are clean, the geolocations are clean, all of that. And then that's going to be what's going to help the identity go. And to make sure that, yes, we're mapped properly to the organizational IDs that are assigned generally by these either government entities or other groups. We want to be compliant.
Very good. Any last burning questions that I haven't picked up? I'd hate to see you leave without your question answered.
If anybody has additional questions, please let me know, and yeah, we'll make sure we get the deck and the recording off to people who need it or want to share it with your colleagues. So if people do have issues with it and think there's a problem, it can be improved, please let me know. We want to make refinements. We want to make it better. We've got a lot of really smart people on this call. Thank goodness. I don't think they'd allow all these people in one room. That would be bad for the industry if anything bad happens, right? It's like not having execs fly on the same plane. But yeah, come in and say, here's what this is an idea, and hey, we're looking for good ideas. Most of the conversations I have are kick holes in this thing and tell me how it doesn't work. And we've pretty much tried to figure it all out, but we don't have all the answers. That's why we want a good, strong board and founders to steer us.
Very good. Well, it seems that there's a lot of interest, just judging by the participation here. So many comments have been such a large number of real senior lifelong respected people on this call. Yeah, I second that. Fantastic job, Robert. Really well done. And looks like you've identified, you and others, I have to say, there's others in this effort as well, have identified a real opportunity area here for identity. I'm sure the identity community would like to help you out. So check back in.
That's what they've told us. Yeah, Doug Rice, unsung hero here. This is not just me trying to push as a Doug. Doug's been involved for a long time as well, and tremendous insights and assistance, and we want everybody to be involved. So my ask is, hey, go bug whoever it may be in those sectors who aren't quite yet founders, push them over the goal line. Let's get this thing started.
Very good. And just before we go, a lot of new people here. We do have a sign up page. Yeah, we do have a sign up page on the diff SIG site. I do think something's happened to the diff site at the moment. So don't just go there now. Maybe come back in a couple of days. Look for the SIG page, and you'll be able to add your name to the mailing list. In which case, you'll receive the regular updates and the meeting invitations, and it'll get in your calendar.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of people ask. Oh, I'm sorry.
Robert,
go ahead.
just to emphasize one of your points, it appears that Diff has lost their DNS services or control of their DNS. That kind of reinforces the importance and the value of the registry.
Indeed.
Yeah, well, and I think with the registry, the way, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but we're looking at having this on, varieties of servers, things like that, and try to make it, immutable. Right, is there a variety of ways to decentralize a lot of that, so there are multiple copies and things like that. Again, we do not have the task of doing DNS, thank goodness. I'm not signing up for that, but we feel we can make this registry robust, and there's been a lot of thought put into how do you make this so not anything is hackable. Absolutely, we just want to make this a resilient, unattractive target, which I guess now is a challenge to folks, but so be it.
Okay, Robert, great job. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Nick.
Everybody
Thanks, everyone.
who took it through to the end, and we'll be in touch. I will send out the Robert's presentation as soon as I get it. And if you're not on the mailing list, do come back, do sign up, and we'll make sure that we get you the information.
And we did okay. We're 10 minutes over, but we did we did spend 15 minutes on introductions, Nick.
Yes. Very good. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.